Hello, and thank you for joining us for Genie Goals Black Friday Unwrapped. I can't believe it's another Black Friday weekend under our belts, but here we are for our final instalment in our Black Friday Cyber Monday weekend webinar series. And you guessed it, it is looking back at the big weekend itself. So, how did it perform? What did we predict? What took us by surprise? And what do brands need to know for next year? So if you're looking for insights to feed into your Black Friday report, or simply to understand how your brand performed versus the benchmarks, you are in the right place. Today, we'll be covering key trends, data points, and insights, and our key thoughts from over the period. Plus, we'll be going all Mystic Meg and grabbing our crystal ball, looking into the future at what Black Friday 2026 could look like. Is it too soon? It's probably too soon, but it's fine. We've been crunching the numbers, reviewing both our proprietary and industry-leading data points, joining the dots to deliver the insights that help us unpick this year's performance and strategies. We'll be sharing some hot off-the-press stats with you, so please do excuse any rough and ready slides. As always, if there is anything in this webinar that either you would like more information on or would like to talk to a member of the team about in more detail, please do either get in touch with them directly or speak to your account lead. Now, we could talk about Black Friday for hours, but we have done our very best to squeeze the top insights into just 1 hour. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Imogen, our Head of Client Strategy and Delivery, to kick things off. Over to you, Imogen.
Thanks, Emily. So this will be very rough and ready. It's all very hot off the press, pulling data from the weekend and from IMRG stats, which are not still up to date for Cyber Monday. So looking at where we were in the initial stages, this is what the year has looked like to date from IMRG data. We can see that it started off as a good year, quite strong trading for revenue in the first half of the year, and then it's been in a bit of a downturn for the latter half of the year, with a lot of negative growth seen. So as we moved into Black Friday weekend, how did this look? So what we can see here is the Monday before Cyber Monday, day by day data of year-on-year growth, of revenue all the way up to the Sunday, and we still don't have the Cyber Monday data yet on the IMRG. And this is the market as a whole, so including lots of different types of retailers in the UK. And what we can see is that it was kind of slow on the Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday ahead of Black Friday, although there was a bit of a bump on the Tuesday. Black Friday and the Saturday themselves were strong in terms of trading, although if you have a look at the scale on the left, you can see that nothing really got up above 3% growth. So everything was kind of wavering around no growth. And then that we still don't have the Cyber Monday data. If I have a look at this on the next slide, compared to previous years, you can see that actually it was quite good on the Friday and the Saturday because we were growing on growth. So the previous year there had been growth as well, and actually there was quite a lot of growth from the Tuesday to the Sunday on the previous year. Partly because it had been a really bad 2023 that it was comparing against. So we've kind of had quite negative growth in 2023, some positive growth in 2024, and then 2025 has been up and down around that zero line. And we don't yet have a kind of a full view from the IMRG of what the total growth was for the period. So we have to guess that based on our own data for now. If we move on to the next slide, we can see that based on our own data, because we've got so many fewer clients than the IMRG data set, it was actually quite massive growth from the Wednesday to the Monday. So I think part of the reason that this data is so skewed is because we've got some new clients in there who have had quite massive growth because they just started with us this year. But there's also some clients who've been with us for years and years in this data set who had some really strong growth as well. So it does show that the very start of the week before the kind of sales, the big growth started to kick in, were quite down. And then there was a lot of growth really focused around the Friday and the Saturday. And the Monday is actually looking really good as well. This is very early data, but we do have our Cyber Monday data, and it does look like it has been strong overall on average. Moving on to the next slide. This is the growth from the IMRG by category. And we can see that there was a really, really strong growth for jewelry on Black Friday itself. Um, Women's clothing didn't perform particularly well, and electrical only really had growth on the Saturday, but that there was kind of up and down growth for gifts and home throughout that period. Um, I think that the women's jewelry big peak on the Friday is kind of balanced out a little bit by it being quite low all the way through the rest of the week. But I would expect if I was to do my Mystic Meg that the Cyber Monday is going to come in at kind of one to 2% growth. But let's see how it comes in later today. Moving on to the next slide. This is just a kind of view of how it had been for some of those categories throughout the year up until that point. So electrical had been kind of wavering around zero up and down, maybe a little bit of growth overall. Home had been quite strong up until the last kind of month or two when it had kind of started to have a bit of a downturn. If I go on to the next one, um, jewelry had been quite poor actually, which isn't actually what we'd seen at Genie Goals, but on the IMRG data, it had been quite a bad year all the way through the year. So that massive Black Friday spike seems to be making up for a bit of negative growth throughout the year. And then clothing had been quite poor all the way through the year, which I think maybe partly the Vinted effect or the Temu effect of people kind of shopping at different types of retailers that have been coming into the market and taking some of that share away from clothing retailers. Moving on to the next slide. We talked in the last one of these webinars about consumer confidence increasing. So we'd seen that the consumer confidence index had increased by 2 points and was at the highest level that it had been since 2021 in October, and that was due to big ticket items. So people's indicator of confidence of buying big ticket items. So I wanted to have a look at what type of items people were buying based on the categories in the IMRG data. If I look onto the next slide, we can see that the categories that had done really, really well were baby and toddler clothes. And this is on Black Friday itself. So they were baby and toddler clothes, gifts, and home improvement, garden, jewelry, and sports and outdoors. So not necessarily the kind of big increases in those kind of big ticket item categories, although in women's wear, electrical, and homeware, AOV was actually higher year on year. So that shows that people were spending on bigger items, or kind of spending more on those particular items, which probably would be in the big ticket space. So those electrical items and furniture items that you might be spending a bit more money on. And I think that is indicative that people have been holding out to buy some of those bigger items until the Black Friday period. AOV was lower across most other categories, and interestingly, order volumes were actually much more robust than revenue across all of these categories where AOV was lower, which goes to show that people were buying more stuff as a whole, but they were spending less money on it. So they're kind of buying more stuff at cheaper prices than they might have in the previous year. So there definitely was a kind of a trend of people spending more money and more buying more stuff, but not necessarily spending more money on that stuff. Which I think is kind of goes to show some of the consumer behavior in recent years of being very deal sensitive and of moving towards types of retailers that are cheaper, like those budget retailers, or going towards secondhand retailers like Vinted. Looking at November as a whole, we don't have IMRG data for November as a whole yet, and won't until for a few more days, I would say. But Genie Goals clients on average were up 8% year on year for site-wide revenue in November, which is a really strong result considering how it had been looking in October, and some of the uncertainty around Black Friday. And we were up 31% on average for sessions. which really is down to the team putting uh, so much work into their budget pacing to make sure that we were able to really capitalize on those cheaper sessions heading towards Black Friday. So earlier in the month when CPMs and CPCs were a lot lower, we used strategies to make sure that we were bringing people to site at those cheaper, more efficient prices, so that we could be able to capitalize on that traffic later on. And I think that has worked really, really well for us, and has been really successful overall. If we look at when Genie Goals clients bought, so this is revenue, total revenue of our clients day by day throughout the period, you can see that whatever the kind of year-on-year data, Black Friday itself still was the big day for us as a whole, and that we kind of were quite flat Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then there was a massive increase on the Friday, Saturday, and Cyber Monday, with a bit of a weird anomaly on the Sunday, which was just a lovely day, wasn't it? So everybody was outside. And I think that we definitely saw that in terms of traffic volumes. Even through the IMRG data, we saw that traffic volumes were up throughout the whole of this period, except for the Sunday when peop less people tended to be visiting shopping websites, which is fair enough, seeing as it was a horrible, horrible weather on the Saturday and lovely weather on the Sunday. Moving on to the next slide. In terms of messaging, and how that was split across different types of retailers, we can see that there was a split, which I talked about a little bit in the previous webinar, between these loyalty kind of building up their first party consented data type of retailers who are trying to capitalize on holding on to their customers by making sure that people are getting offers through loyalty deals, Prime on the Amazon, in the Amazon case, points, that kind of thing. Then we had these very, very cheap retailers who are going for lowest price guarantees. They're kind of like leading with loss leaders to try and get people to come into the site. In the case of retailers like Currys, and they're kind of keeping people on the website with just very, very low prices. Then we had these kind of ones that here are called the Trust Guardians, so things like John Lewis, Next, Dyson, who've kind of sticking with that brand integrity, and making sure that you're buying a high quality product at the best price that you can. And really, I think as a kind of almost a counterpoint to those really cheap retailers, where you're kind of paying a lower price, but you're putting a bit of risk there, that you might not end up with the best quality product or something that will last. And then we've got some brands there that were really shouting on their websites about getting same day, next day, quick delivery, and getting products right now. If we move on to the next slide. Talking a little bit about timings here. So IMRG data from the last few years shows that people have been going earlier and earlier with launching their Black Friday offers, and that last year about half of retailers were already live by week 3 of the period. This year for us, about half of retailers were already live by the end of week 1, and in many cases we were having retailers starting end of October. And by the end of week 3, about 90% of our brands were live with some sort of sale. So we did have a few go live in Black Friday week or just for the weekend, but it was definitely a small number, and not the majority. So it's definitely the trend has definitely moved very much into a long month-long sale, and it's almost given us a different kind of peak. So we've got that early peak at the start of November when the sale launches, or kind of mid-November, depending on when the sale launches. It goes down a little bit so that we're down year on year, a little bit in the middle, and then the second peak around Black Friday when retail when retail's kind of big for everyone. Um, and the benefit of that has been that we're able to capitalize on driving some cheaper traffic and getting some more efficient sales earlier on in the month, which is great. And it does spread out logistics across the whole month, which makes it a little bit easier to deal with the challenges of sending out so many deliveries. And then the next slide, I think, means that we're moving on to the paid search section with Jeremy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Imogen. Thank you. Very insightful. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy, Head of Paid Search at Genie Goals. So we're going to look at PPC. So heading on, so November really marks a shift towards that brand conversions. So that's effectively when we see the share of search growing. So we expect more previous visitors and customers to come back to your site. So if we're highly focused on new customer acquisition, which is often the case for the brands that we work with, it really is one thing to bear in mind. It's completely normal to kind of seeing that spike in brand conversions. So we earlier in the month we shared a graph from Google directly as well. So I kind of wanted to make sure is what we're seeing as well, and it is effectively just that. So as you can see on the graph here, so this is Google Ads data for brand activity on search from the period August to this Monday. So you can clearly see the gradual increase in traffic and conversions from November 1st, and really that kind of spike as Imogen was talking about on Black Friday as that extreme peak. Now, our job as PPC people, marketers, it's all about if we are actively bidding on brand for our brands, if it's part of our strategy, it's all about driving as much traffic as we can, but at the lowest cost per click possible, and to capture that demand. Now, although that demand was captured by PPC, it wasn't necessarily generated by the channel. I think that's something that we always need to keep in mind. It's about your broader marketing mix. So, of course, that's your shopping, that's Meta, that's TikTok, PR content, and even your physical stores. So they all play a role in driving that graph up. So when we're assessing the performance in November, I think we should really look at the overall business performance and not just isolate each channel. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. Now, on the next slide, so how peaky was it? So Google predicted Sunday, so bear with me, Sunday after Black Friday to be the peak, followed by Black Friday itself, and then Sunday prior to Black Friday. Now, Sunday it's now turned out to be quite a lovely day, as Imogen was saying in the end. But what really happened from our side is that Black Friday remained the key date here. It's very similar to what we've seen in previous years. So it's almost kind of BAU. It's kind of what we were expecting, and it's that kind of like classic seesaw trend day after day during the weekend. The second thing that we noted is that slump in conversion value. So Monday to Thursday prior to Black Friday, as many consumers were holding back. Again, back to what Imogen was talking about, the offers are coming, more deals are going to come, so you kind of want to hold on at that point. So our narrative is always going to be to maintain the traffic level, because we don't want to miss out on the traffic on those consumers that are doing their research and then going to convert later on throughout the weekend. The last noticeable trend is that traffic every single Sunday of the month. You can see that kind of spike in traffic every single Sunday of the month, as most people were doing their research just ahead of Black Friday. Now, I'm sure that's the moment that everyone's been waiting for. On the next slide, it's about looking at CPCs and what CPCs looking like year on year. We've talked about that quite a lot throughout the year. It's getting more expensive. The channel is getting more expensive. So here we've got 3 clear phases. So number one, so as soon as kind of those retailers, large retailers went on sale towards the end of October / early November, we really saw CPCs starting to rise, but it was still within those acceptable ranges, and that's when you really wanted to start capturing the people during their research phase. Then phase 2 is very much from Black Friday's Fake Friday onwards. So that's the Friday before Black Friday. And that's where consumer behavior is now shifting from discovery phase towards purchase mode. But really, the amount of ad slots remain the same. So you've got more retailers within the auction and fighting for visibility. So as you would expect, CPC starting to ramp up. And no surprises here, but on Black Friday, that was the highest we've seen this year and year over year. But the increase versus last year was only 3% across the board. So it could, I think, in hindsight, it could have been a lot worse compared to what we've seen throughout the year. Now, there will be lots of variation across industries, especially if we look at electrical, they've been impacted quite a lot. But overall, that tends to be what we've seen across a lot of paid search clients. Now, to combat, bear with me, that one is quite heavy for the eyes, but to combat this and to drive the volume during Black Friday, for a lot of years now, well, the narrative has always been to invest earlier on as opposed to just in Black Friday and trying to drive that those clicks before the big weekend. We saw the volume of self-driven over Black Friday weekend, so we have to be present. We know we have to be there, but equally, CPC is just unsustainable to drive profitable sales. And so kind of here is the data to prove that investing beforehand is worth it. So that data is from thousands of retailers, which are managed by a sister company, the Genie Shopping Network, and they are a CSS provider across both the UK and the EU. Now, and it's quite, if you look at previous years as well, it's quite consistent. So it does mean that about 33%, that's literally a third of overall sales, happen on Black Friday, but as a result of the click that happened earlier in the month. So it's all about maxing, in order to maximize sales on that day, it's all about making sure you're investing kind of earlier in the month and you're capturing those clicks, because ultimately all you're going to do is inflate the CPCs and really fighting for that slot. So if you want to be a lot more drive volume, but be a lot more profitable, it's all about looking at November as a whole, as opposed to Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend only. And if we look at Cyber Monday specifically, it's even more exacerbated because 40% of the sales come from clicks earlier in the month. So that's typically the end of the Black Friday, Cyber Monday events. At that point, people are just waiting this last discount bargain. They've done their research, though. They've done so many clicks prior to that day. So that's why the sales from yesterday, a lot of those will be attributed to clicks from earlier in the month. So yeah, again, it's great to look at it from a day-by-day point of view, but I think there is a strong case to making sure we look at the November as a whole, not just the weekend. Again, it's a marathon, yeah, no sprint. That's why I call it that way. But things worth sharing here, what we've seen across the board. So towards the end of October, early November, some of our clients went on sale, and I think it's worth looking at the data versus what we've seen on Black Friday and Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend as well. So at that point, some of our clients had a 3-day sale, which also coincided with large retailers that went on sale with the actual Black Friday deals. But for our retailers, it was very much a Halloween sale, end of season sale, however you wanted to call it, but it was very much just for 3-day only. And in certain cases, it was very similar to some of the deals they had at the end of November. Now, CPC at that time, on average, again, across all industries, they were 30% cheaper than Black Friday. And although conversion value was nowhere near, of course, Black Friday, it was only 12% down on average compared to Sunday, past Black Friday, so last Sunday. So I really think there's an opportunity here to drive volume and to protect the margins towards the end of October. Obviously, it will depend on the industry, depend on every different cases, different clients. Everyone got different priorities, but ultimately those that had a sale at that toward the end of the month, so great value, and there's really an opportunity here to kind of drive more volume and more clicks next year. So we talked a lot about rising CPCs and the idea of investing earlier. So I kind of wanted to call out the growth of demand gen this year. we know that Google has made so many changes to the algorithm, and there really so many features this year, which meant that we were more in control in terms of creative, but also bidding. So I really think that come 2026, that will become part of our BAU. And that type of activity aligns really well with the likes of Advantage Plus Creative on Meta, and it's all about engaging with new audiences and working on bringing them down further down the funnel. So you got different type of creative here that we've used throughout the period. And so I've got a couple of stats here, but really, obviously, we're starting from the bottom here, so that's where the percentage is really high. But I think it's promising into heading into the new year. So more traffic, more engagement with clicks and click-through rate. Meanwhile, we're able to kind of maintain CPCs and CPM down versus what we were seeing last year. So yeah, I really think there's a strong opportunity in the next year to drive more cheaper traffic to the site ahead of peak periods. Now, to end my session on PPC, now the one thing I wanted to say is that really the world is your oyster. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with Nano Banana. Interesting name anyway, but it's kind of been released by Google a couple of weeks ago within the Google Ads interface, and it's Google's new generative media tool. It's not available yet for everyone, but it is for some of our retailers. And I really think that is going to help push channels like Demand Gen, but also support the work that we're doing on Meta as well, specifically around generating more asset variations for Demand Gen, but also for PMAX as well, and with all the different asset groups that we've got. So we know creative is a bit of a pain point. And you can see here in literally 2 minutes before this call, actually, I was able to take 2 SKUs from our client's feed, describe what I wanted to see with the help of Gemini, so refining the prompt, and voila. And that's the finished product in the end. Now, of course, you don't have overlays, you don't have a logo, and potentially the fire and the coffee steam is giving away that it's AI generated. But really, if we look at where we were 6 months ago, this is far ahead, and is definitely a type of creative that we could definitely use within the platform. So you can only imagine where we're going to go, where the tool is going to be in the next couple of months and in 2026. And I almost forgot to say that is free. I think that's the most interesting thing as well, is within your Google Ads accounts. So it's free to use. You don't have any cap. So yeah, definitely something that I'm really excited about within the platform. So one for 2026. And that's me. And I think I'm passing on to paid social with Sam.
Thanks, Jez. So just like for PPC, I'm going to be running you through what we've seen for November on the paid social side. So I'm going to kick off with some top level insights on the next slide. So I'm very pleased to say that probably for the first time that I can remember, meta costs, so this exclusively metadata, have fallen for the first time in so many years. I remember this time last year, the channel was starting to get a little bit of heat in terms of how expensive it was. And although we've seen a slight increase in costs on PPC, that hasn't happened on Meta. So decreases in CPMs and CPCs, engagement has been relatively steady. Conversion rate slightly down, AOV slightly up. But what we've seen throughout the month is that although things got a little bit more expensive, they remain down, and we start to close a gap in terms of this conversion rates and the AOV differences. So why do I think that's happened? For a lot of our clients this year, we've been recommending that we do a lot more upper funnel. So think reach, think video view, focus activity, and that certainly seems to have helped. The second thing that I think has really helped manage those meta costs, not only for advertisers that are on multiple platforms, but also those just on Meta, is platform diversification. So on my next slide, you can see a comparison in CPC costs for advertisers operating on 3 platforms, so Meta, TikTok, and Pinterest. We've seen a decrease in CPCs of 19% year on year on Meta for them. because they're on 3 platforms, they don't need to push Meta quite as hard, and they get more bang for their buck across all of those different platforms. Whilst because those big players are not advertising quite as much on Meta, it's lowering those CPC costs for those brands that are exclusively on Meta or on one other platform. And you can see the trend in spends in the table on the right. So this is year-on-year spend for November up until yesterday, year-on-year. And whilst Meta budgets are very slightly up, it's Pinterest where we're seeing growth, so 83% up year-on-year. But TikTok is where things have really exploded in terms of ad spend. So throughout the year, we've been working with our clients with third-party attribution tools that have really highlighted the hidden performance and the attribution of those platforms, and it's means shifting budgets. So yeah, it's shifting budgets to those platforms. And the other factor is these platforms have put a lot of extra work in this year in their ability to drive lower funnel sales. So Pinterest and TikTok are more awareness focused platforms, but through Smart Plus, Performance Plus on Pinterest and Smart Plus on TikTok, they're getting better at driving sales. So definitely a key recommendation for 2026 is to think about continue to diversify your paid social platform spend. On the next slide, I wanted to go back to something I spoke through in our previous webinar, which was an Andromeda update. So for those that don't know, Andromeda is Meta's algorithm that optimizes your ad performance. It tells you what audiences to spend on, what creative to spend on. And LinkedIn, late October, early November, was full of so many posts about Andromeda updates, how it's going to completely kill your ads, how you need to restructure your ad account. I thankfully didn't jump on the hype of that. But what we've seen is that there hasn't really been too much of an impact. It was a really important thing to consider within our Black Friday, Cyber Monday strategy, because the big change was this change to creative similarity. So Meta was going to start to index your ads by their relative similarity. Ads that look too similar to one another would be classified under the same entity ID, and Meta would essentially penalize you for having ads that were too similar. So have we seen that actually kind of transcend into our Black Friday, Cyber Monday performance? I would say, broadly speaking, no, not really. Black Friday, Cyber Monday is probably the time of year where creative similarity increases because everything's so sales focused, I would say. But even for clients that are running 20, 25 ads per ad set, or Black Friday, Cyber Monday focused, it's really those top 1 to 4 ads that are driving most of your ad spend. Outside of that, although there are some marginal gains to be had by having more ads and making sure they are diverse, it's those top performers that are really driving the performance for most of our clients. The slight caveat to that is that for clients that did continue to run some BAU activity, so not Black Friday, Cyber Monday, think more gifting, Christmas, influencer, content-led creative partner, we did see a bit more of a blend between Black Friday, Cyber Monday-led content and that BAU content. But within clients that are running exclusively Black Friday, Cyber Monday activity, it really didn't seem to make too much of an impact. I think it will become important next year. These KPIs and metrics are going to start to come into our ad accounts. So we're going to have a better view of the actual grading of our content. But for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it didn't seem to have too much of an effect. The other thing, although similarity is important, the other thing is volume. You see a lot of noise around needing to have hundreds and hundreds of ads in ad accounts these days. But I would say what we're seeing at the moment is, yeah, volume is probably, it is important, but what's more important is making sure you've got real top quality creative, because Meta always prioritizes 1 to 4 ads within most ad sets within your accounts. In my next slide, and also again referring back to our previous webinar, something that we looked at the time was what are John Lewis doing? So John Lewis is a brand that all of our clients and the industry really look to. For some, they're a key retail partner, and for most, their competitors are also stocked in John Lewis. When we looked back in early November, they weren't pushing Black Friday at all hard. Everything was very gifting focused, in-store focused. They were just launching their Christmas ad at the time. They're doing some teasers. But pretty much after that webinar, I think they went super hard on Black Friday. Yeah, completely flipped. So brand-led, category-led messaging, all with aggressive price matching. I think that John Lewis's aggressiveness this year has been a key thing to monitor in terms of the context of your own performance, because they went very hard this year. My next slide is just another look at the creative landscape. So I pulled out Siri toothbrushes. They're featured in Life Goals as our top meta creative, and hopefully you can see why by the content that they are running. They're definitely hitting those notes of creative similarity. So they're running early access to capture those leads. We know that first party data is becoming increasingly important, and they led into that. They're running their hero-led, slightly anti-Black Friday messaging video. It focuses on not buying pointless products over Black Friday and something you'll actually use. Using split screen creative, which you know is incredibly effective in driving conversion. So they're showcasing product, they're showcasing very unique features of the product alongside people actually using the product. They're showing UGC content behind the scenes. So something that we often see from electrical brands is that warehouse-led imagery, and they led into this basically just showing everyone how much they're selling and everything is limited by stock, so buy now. Their content is always backed by founders. So although it's a feature of their content regularly, and they brought that into their Black Friday messaging as well. The two founders are often in there leading the brand message. And the last point was content creator led content. We know that Meta's pushing this at the moment. They said that we should be spending around 20% of our content on branded partnership ads. Not all of our accounts are there yet, but Suri definitely lent into that, and that has been part of their strategy really since the get-go. They're one of the few brands that have actually managed to convince me to buy something almost exclusively through paid social ads, and that's because they're doing a really, really good job with their content. And the last slide for me is just a few predictions for 2026. So number one, continue platform diversification. So I'm going to tip Reddit for growth in 2026. I don't think it's going to be quite as astronomical as TikTok, but I think Reddit is a platform that has really developed over the last few years. Its traffic has increased because of a Google partnership deal where they rank really well in organic terms. They got a lot of referrals through ChatGPT, although that's slightly reduced now. But you can start to see a lot more brands advertising on Reddit now. And we launched our first brand on Reddit in Q4 this year. The second is continue scaling of TikTok, really. I don't think things are going to slow down from a conversion standpoint. They're only going to lean more into their AI and their capabilities to drive sales through campaigns like Smart Plus. I think that they're with TikTok Shop as well and more brands exploring that next year. I think TikTok is only going to expand. The last point is similar to Jez in his final point with Nano Banana is AI content becoming increasingly normalized. I didn't have as much success with Jez as my Nano Banana trial here, but I think that although there's definitely a need to get AI content right, I think it's very distinguishable at the moment, and it can get quite a lot of comments if brands are using it too much, but it's only really going to improve, and it really opens the doors to having a lot more creative within our ad accounts. So that's all for me. I'm going to pass on to Rachel when she joins.
Many thanks, Sam. Just to introduce myself fully before I jump into the world of affiliates, I'm Rachel and I'm head of affiliates and partner marketing here at Genie Goals. I've gone with a bit of a headline for my section. So the headline was very much around these kind of very big moves that we saw a lot of the big multi-retailers making within the affiliate channel, but also wider. So if we go on to the first slide for me. I've taken a bit of a sample of the current AWIN data and the AWIN tracker at the moment, mainly because AWIN is a massive affiliate network in the UK, and they are tracking the likes of M&S, Very, Temu, to name a few, Currys. So they're quite a good barometer of what's happening in affiliates within the kind of UK retailer space. They are showing that they've almost hit in 2024 numbers, but they're just not quite there. There's still a little bit of data still to pull through for Cyber Monday. The big takeaways are that yes, traffic is quite up and commission is up, but actually sales are trending down, as is revenue. And we have also seen quite a similar theme on Rakuten as well, although we can only see the traffic numbers there. Of course, because this is very, very top line data, there are huge amounts of nuances within it. But the one I wanted to pull out, very much linked to that first slide, that first intro that I just went into, is that department stores really did boom over this period in terms of affiliate numbers. So they saw plus 40% in sales and plus 70% in traffic during the period, but only a 0.9% growth in revenue, which is kind of following some of the trends we've talked about with average order values, but is linked to some kind of nuances, I think. So I think Temu, for one thing, is tracking within this in AWIN. So obviously their average order value is going to be lower, and they wouldn't have been tracking last year. And also very leaned in heavily to discounts. They were doing 30% discounts up to 50% discounts and rotating them a lot. So that margin is going to be eroded quite heavily, although sales are up. One of the big notable things for the department store category and where that growth is coming from is definitely in the CSS area. There was about 1,000% growth in traffic recorded by AWIN for department stores in CSS. Some of this is linked into what Etsy are doing. They don't do much in cashback, for example, but they do loads in CSS, which could be kind of bringing those numbers up a bit overall. Just a couple of other highlights before I move in for those wider numbers is that fashion did grow in terms of AWIN numbers. They grew 33% in terms of sales, but not much in traffic, which really suggests to me that volume was coming from incentive sites because they tend to not be big traffic drivers. And following the trend that some of the other guys spoke about earlier, electronics did also have a bit of a tougher time over this period, and we're recording about 30% down in sales. But there is a big skewing factor in this numbers in that sub networks are recording this huge traffic year on year at 50%, but down 30% year on year in sales. And for me, that just indicates the quality of that traffic. At Genie Goals, we don't work with many sub networks. We do a bit with skim links in terms of a performance PR element, but we don't work with the wider sub networks, and it's for this really reason. And at key times like this, traffic goes crazy, we have no ideas where it's coming from, and it skews that overall narrative and numbers. Just to move on to my next slide, so I want to drill down a little bit into one retailer, John Lewis. I'm old enough to remember when John Lewis was tracking through AWIN, and when we were really excited at AWIN about Black Friday results, and then when they completely stopped doing Black Friday in affiliates and just focused on that kind of price match messaging. This year, I've seen a complete resurgence of them in the affiliate channel. So they've had consistently rotating rates. The rates have not been the biggest on the market, but they've been consistently tweaking across categories and doing them as the best offers they can. They've done flash rates. So they've done target products with a higher cashback rate laid over the top, and all of this throughout has been really heavily underpinned by that kind of price match promise. I also feel like they've been incredibly reactive this period. It feels like they're kind of watching when other people are going on sale, when other people are doing offers, and coordinating their messaging accordingly. I think that was really obvious when a lot of the fashion brands and the upper high street fashion brands like Hush and Whistles and Monsoon and people like that went on to their sales the day before Fake Friday, and literally 2 days later John Lewis goes out with a CRM email talking talking about how they've got all the brands on their site, all the savings on brands in one place, and they're price matched. So they definitely went all in on Black Friday, which did surprise me because it's not something that I've seen them do, particularly in terms of cashback, for quite a while. I had one more surprise from affiliates that I wanted to highlight on the next slide. I was doing a little bit of like looking around, seeing what's going on, looking at the code sites, and I saw Amazon with a very prominent feature on vouchercodes.co.uk's homepage. Amazon, with their Amazon's Associates program, don't typically or haven't particularly played very heavily in the kind of incentive affiliate space for quite a long time, mainly because there are so many requirements when you're on Amazon Associates program. It makes voucher code partners find it quite difficult to drive traffic for them and to work with them. But having such a prominent placement on vouchercodes.uk did surprise me. The main messaging was around electricals. Unsurprisingly, we also saw that kind of search volume really increase in electricals for Amazon heading into the weekend. And also baby was a big focus for them. So creating baby wish lists, unlocking exclusive codes for creating those wish lists. Can't even say it, wish list. And actually the code was going to be unlocked later. So it was actually, as well as providing offers, they seem to be heavily wanting to drive and incentivize consumers to use their services, which definitely provides something to watch moving forwards. So moving on to one of the big stories for me was definitely cashback. They are considered like the biggest affiliate over this period and like the biggest revenue driver on the networks. And they were still huge. And for our clients, we saw a lot of growth in cashback. So they were probably about like, it fluctuated about 100% up year on year. So it was quite a lot of growth. But all these retailers went really heavy on cashback rates. Last year was the first time we saw like the 20% cashback rates become more of a thing. This year, there was almost pretty much a daily deal of a 17% rate, a 30% rate, a 20% rate. It was actually got a bit crazy at times. It's like, can they go any higher? Can they squeeze these margins anymore? But actually, when you look into the AWIN data, cashback was really down. Like traffic was down about 50% and sales was about the same. Sales and revenue was down about the same. AWIN think it's because people diversified their spend more this year, like the brands. They did more in influencers and more in loyalty. But I don't know. It feels like these cashback rates were quite bold. They were quite big. I'm not sure why it didn't quite work into the sales for them. But one thing I would say about these cashback rates is they didn't create good consumer journeys on the whole, in my opinion. They weren't always what they seemed. It would say 20% upfront, but actually when you clicked through, it was only on about 4 or 5 products and the rest was only on a 2% cashback rate, which I think could be quite frustrating for a consumer when you're trying to make quick decisions and you're trying to work out actually how much cashback you could get. Our approach was definitely to go for a lower rate, but a bit more broadly spread across categories, but lower. And we didn't invest in tenancy because consumer behavior actually shows you get a lot of that traffic anyway. So just moving on. I did want to pull out some kind of highlights from our affiliate partners this year because there was some really great stuff that happened in channel. And it really highlighted to me the roles of all these different partners and how incredibly important they are to retailers' overall strategies. So if we're looking at acquisition, CSS, I always say, are a fantastic acquisition partner. We saw them having new customer rates between 35 and 50%, but also driving amazing volume. And Skimlinks have had a little bit of a dip year on year, but they are a really key partner in terms of getting performance PR coverage. And they were showing that upper funnel value with new customer rates of around 70% for the clients we have who work with them on a pure content only basis. Although I've just talked about that dip in cashback, actually we cannot ignore that they had fantastic average order values. I think for top cashback, they were about 15% higher average order values than the rest of the affiliates on programs. And for British Airways Avios points, that was around 25% higher. So these partners with that direct consumer offer really do incentivize purchase. The final thing I want to pull out is Linkbee. We tested a lot more in Linkbee this year. So they are editorial content on a CPC, and we saw some really fantastic results that I'd love to kind of dive into a bit more on the next slide. For me, Linkbee is a pure performance PR style content partner that is really easy to turn on and engage with big sites like The Independent, which I'm going to talk about here, for really engaged content and really quick dedicated articles. We experimented with both listicles and also dedicated content. Listicles, unsurprisingly, there's a lot of noise. They give you absolutely great coverage, but the actual click-through is much lower. But a really well-aligned dedicated article like this one can provide fantastic results. So we actually saw a direct ROAS around 3 from this activity, which is really, really good for content. Content usually we would say is traffic driving. A huge late traffic surge in November, showing that people were still searching around and still looking for deals and still doing that kind of conversational more search, like best jewelry deals in this case. And it does have that longer consideration cycle, linking back to everything everyone else has said about that click might not convert on this upper funnel activity till later, still holds very true within the affiliate channel. And one of the things I wanted to point out, if you just click again for me, is how many more times could this article be seen? Because actually we found this article being surfaced quite a lot in kind of AI overviews, and The Independent was one of the publications that came up a lot, and they're doing really well to be optimizing here. So I'm only going to see this expand personally because it was a fantastic result from what started off as a bit of a test case for us. So moving into my last couple of slides before I wrap up. Creators is an area that definitely is in boom. Awen said they thought more budget was moved here. They're seeing sales growth within the Black Friday numbers of around 25% up year on year. One thing I noticed is creators really leveraging the commercial aspects of what they can do. So this example is an influencer across Meta, and Instagram. She's got ability to sign people up to her Substack, and then she sends newsletters from that. So she did created gift guides, and then linking people through to her curated LTK shopping pages, and also her Amazon's associates shopping pages as well. This is a really high conversion driving strategy that's all about awareness, but also about this influencer being incredibly commercial. And I feel like this is going to be a trend that's going to continue. And LTK was really, really key for fashion brands. But I just want to reference that it is not a switch on, switch off strategy. You need to invest in it. So people who've been doing it all year really won over the weekends, and people who tried to suddenly just do it maybe missed out a little bit. And just to wrap up, you're going to see a lovely AI generated image to end. But I just wanted to say that I do feel like affiliates as a term is going to completely merge into partnerships for next year. The way we measure and track is changing massively. Those AI overviews don't quite work in the last click world as perfectly, and no one quite knows how to track them just yet. But if we can see affiliates as much more than just voucher and cashback sites, and a whole ecosystem of partners that can hit different stages of your consumer journey, we're going to win. And I would like to see that 2026 brands are leaning in and doing more than ever and considering that performance PR, those influencers, and the conversion capabilities. That's the end of the affiliate section. So I'm going to hand back to Emily now to wrap up all the insights from today.
Thanks very much, Rachel. So that was it. That was Black Friday weekend summarized in an hour, lots crammed in. I've taken loads of notes as I normally do through these things. I've got kind of 3 big takeaways, lots of little ones. First one I think is just around timing. So the guy showed loads of data points in terms of what it looked like this year. We had loads of people, both our clients, but also the industry as a whole, going much earlier this year. Did it drive generally much more incremental? maybe, maybe not. But what it does help you is by going early, is being able to make the most out of those CPCs and CPMs before they go much higher. I think one of the secrets that we saw was those kind of Halloween sales, those ones which are time limited, that's urgent, that's just before everything goes crazy, could be really useful, because what we have seen over the last few months is that kind of pent up purchasing power, that it's not, that people are holding back because they know the system, they know how to play the game, they are holding off. And as what we did say is there was a lot of kind of a variety of things that people are spending their money on. They were collecting that list of things, whether it's stuff they buy all the time or those one-off purchases, to be able to save that money as much as possible. I think that careful, considered spending, I think, is what we saw at Black Friday this year. Secondly, diversification is clearly really key. We saw on Sam's point in terms of just social as a channel, those which were spreading themselves across more than one platform, we're definitely seeing those rewards. Things like minus 19% CPCs seem like a really good way to be going, especially when generally media is only just getting more expensive. So ways where we can be able to bring that cost down for our clients is definitely really, really valuable. But not just on paid social, but actually as a whole. I think Jeremy made the points in terms of making sure you're not just looking at your channels in isolation. We see brands kind of put all their spend in PPC during Black Friday because they want to be able to drive that revenue as much as possible. What we are seeing across the agency is making sure you've got a really robust plan and diverse plan of your media spend, with that full funnel approach is really going to be what reaps the rewards in Black Friday. You just need to plan it in those months leading up to it. And the last point for me is just around department stores. John Lewis, Amazon, Argos, those guys seem to have gone quite hard on Black Friday itself. So if anybody sat there and they've seen a lot of traffic go onto their site, but maybe not the revenue that they were hoping for, I would definitely see if there was anything more to unpick on those accounts or on those brands. If you might have lost some of that traffic to other ones where price sensitivity is going to be so high at this time of year. I could go on and on. There's lots of stuff for us to be able to discuss. All of this types of insight is being shared with all of the accounts teams. So please do kind of get in contact with us if there's anything that you'd like to discuss in more detail, or speak to your account teams directly. But we will finish it up there. We could go on, but we will pause. There'll be more data that comes, and whatever comes, we will make sure that we share with your teams accordingly. So thanks very much, everybody, and we'll speak to you soon.